So let me go ahead and zoom in. And we're going to put some windows in here. With windows, for the most part, okay, you can go through and choose a type again. That's where we always start. And if you turns out that you want to change the type later, that's okay. Just choose a window and change the type that's over here. So let me go through. I'm going to put in some casement windows. I'll put in some 24 by 48s. And I'm going to put one over here. I'm going to put one over here. Now notice as I'm putting them in there, I'm hovering my cursor just slightly to the outside of the wall. Just slightly to the outside. That's going to help them to understand which is the exterior side of the window. Put another one over here. Now I've put those in there, but I didn't do a very good job. I actually sort of wanted those to be evenly spaced, but I didn't quite get them that way right up front. So let's talk about how you can fix that. So I can take any window. If I click on the window, select it, I get little dimensions. Okay, that's sort of useful. So this is called a temporary dimension. The temporary dimension is temporary because it'll disappear as soon as we unselect things. So if I know that I want those to be 4 feet center to center, I can say, great, I'm going to click over here and type in 4. Now notice with my dimensions, it's a little strange. I didn't actually click on the dimension first. I clicked on the object and the dimension became active, and then I could change the dimension. Okay, so watch out for that. As we start putting dimensions on things, you're going to be tempted to click on the dimensions, which lets you change this text style and some things about that. But if you want to actually change the number, typically you have to select the object and then kind of move the dimension. So I'll put 4 in there. That looks good. Now watch out for this. Well, I want 4 over here too, so I'm going to type 4 here. Now, the mistake that I'm making is that whatever the object is that's selected is the one that's going to move. Okay, so if I want to have that relationship where this one's 4 feet apart, I need to sort of select this one instead and put the 4 feet in. Okay, so watch out for that. Just as you're working with things, so you just don't go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth all the time. It's easy to do. Okay, another nice thing that you can do with dimensions is to actually use an equality constraint. And that's very useful. If you really want things to be evenly spaced, we can set up equality. And let's talk about that. It's going to be the first instance where we actually dimension something. And we're going to do it in a funny reason because we just want to sort of use it as a constraint. But we're going to go to the annotation tab and we're going to choose, I'm going to choose the aligned dimension. We're going to put a dimension in between this window, and that window. So I'm going to select the 3 center lines and then place a dimension that connect them all. So I will say, let's come over here. Aligned. Dimensioning works like this. What you do is you hover over something that you want to dimension to. I'll do the center of the window, to the center of the window, to the center of the window. Okay, I could go to the wall too, but I don't want to do it for what I'm doing here. And I will now just move out and just click into space, and it'll put a dimension there. So this is called a string dimension. As opposed to a single dimension, we've strung several together. Okay, and right now, since it is a string dimension, we have the opportunity to sort of impose equality. Okay, it has to be on a string though, otherwise it won't work. If you do them individually, it won't understand that you can actually work with them together. Yes. Yes, you can. The question is, can you also do them edge to edge or something like that? And you can. You can even choose, as you're dimensioning, that's the center. If I hover over the edge, or tab to get that, I can do the same thing. I get the edges just the same. Okay. Now, yes? Oh, say again. What? Yeah, it's really going to be whatever, or we want to do with the dimensions. So for example, I could dimension from this wall to this window. I can dimension from that wall to that wall. You're going to find, that's the gist of dimensioning. You sort of just saw it. And then we'll go into more detail about what it is, but it all comes down to just selecting different points of reference on the different objects and just putting dimensions in. And then if we want to go through and change things, so for example, I want to take this wall, and no one likes 15'1". That's just a funny dimension. So let's see if I can get to that. I have to say activate the dimensions. It's slightly blue over there. I can say make that 16 feet. So this is an example of why I say when you're putting your walls down, don't worry too much about the precise dimensions, because it's easy to go back and sort of adjust them all later. It'll all sort of work. So let's talk about this string over here. So this dimension, these 2 4-foots, offer you this intriguing possibility of making things equal. Now, that doesn't seem like it's going to be all that helpful because they're already equal. Let me make them a little unequal. Okay, but I can still do it and show you what happens. The equal widget up here, that little glyph, if you choose it, will go through and make those evenly spaced. Let's talk about why you might want to do that. Because the nice thing about if you use equality as a constraint is that if you change things, it holds that relationship. So whether you bring them close in or take them far apart, you're basically saying, no matter what happens between the first and the last window, I want them to be evenly spaced. Okay? And that actually turns out to be a useful thing. We do that a lot in terms of trying to figure out exactly how we'd like things to be. Now, you can work with all these things together. So for example, if I choose that one and I say, make that 8 feet over here, that'll pop over. Okay, so we're done? Oh, how do you make it just back to out of EQ or? Yeah. Okay, if you come back over here, you can cancel it. If you come back over here and it's the numbers, you can EQ and turn it on. Okay, we can actually display the quantities too. That's a choice of just the dimension style. Okay, so don't worry if this seems a little strange and abstract. For my architects in the crowd, often the whole idea of having very evenly spaced windows is a very attractive thing. We tend to like to kind of keep things kind of evenly spaced. But let me show you one other variation on the theme for placing windows. And that is, we can do something called arraying the windows. And arraying things is actually kind of a very useful thing. Arraying lets you go through and have a number of equally spaced things where you can vary the number. Okay, so a very common example of arraying is something like this. Oh, you're going to find out later on we're going to put chairs in rows in auditoriums and stuff like that. And you basically want to take that same chair and make 25 of them. And no one likes to copy and paste 25 chairs and try and get them all lined up. So what we can do is choose the first one, put one at the other end, and then say how many are going to go between it. Okay, and arraying is a very useful technique. So you can use it for doors, for windows, for furniture, whatever you like. And let me just kind of show you what it looks like. I'm going to take a window. I'm going to put it over here. I'll put it on the side. Okay. And now, as opposed to just copying and replacing another one, like here's copy. I can just copy and move it over. But what I'm going to do is instead, right next to copy, choose the array tool. And the array tool offers us a very kind of interesting set of options. We can go through and say, are we going to indicate the location of the second one or the last one? And that's really all about, are you going to take a small increment and repeat it, or are you going to take a large increment and subdivide it? It's just two ways of looking at the same problem. So if it's a variable length and a fixed increment, then you'll repeat it. If it's a fixed length and a variable increment, then you'll do the last. But I'm going to go to last, because that's the way I usually do it. And I'll say, let's go through. I'll put the last one over here. And then I get this very interesting choice. Well, how many of those would I like to put in there? 2, 3, 4. I'll just type in a number. That's what 4 windows looks like. If I want to, I'll make it 5 or 6 or 3. Now, the interesting thing about these arrays is that since it's based on the first and last one, if you want to change the array, I can move the first or last one. And again, it'll maintain the relationship and it'll maintain the number. It's just going to have a different starting and finishing point. Okay, so, yeah, go ahead. Say it? Oh, the arrays? Okay, what we'll do is we'll start by putting 1 in, and then we'll take the array tool, and I just click on the first element. Oops, I'm sorry. I'll do it the other way. I'll select it, then I'll choose the array tool. Now I have the choices. So second or last, I'll choose last, and then I can put in the number that I want to put in there. Yes?
It's not giving the option of pressing EQ on top. Why is that?
Did you do 2 or 3 things as a single string of dimensions, or did you put separate dimensions in? Okay, if you do a single dimension that goes 1, 2, 3, then it'll put the equal in there. It has to be a string of dimensions. Nice. Okay, so there's a lot we can do with arraying, but again, I'm not going to worry about that too much. The big thing I want you to know about Windows, though, is this. That as you work with Windows, you can set the properties. We can set the sill height, we can set the base height, we can set the material properties, but we can also change and make custom sizes. Yeah, question? You good? Nah, okay, sounds good. So let's get back over here, and I'll go to 3D, and we'll just take a look at this. For example, all of these windows are coming in at a sill height of, or a head height of 7 feet. They're trying to align with a door height of 7 feet. It's very common for commercial buildings and residences. It's usually often a little lower. It's often 6'8" in residences. But 7 feet's a very common dimension these days. Okay? There's the head height and the sill height. Those two things are related. There's a kind of constant relationship based on the height of the window. So if I want to change that, I can say, oh, I want to put this window at 8 feet off the ground at the top and move it up. I might move that one down to 6 feet. Have a little artistic pattern going there. You can also go through and change windows. So for example, if I want to change it to be a big double hung window instead, it takes the same pick location, just swaps it in there instead. Now, a small variation I want you to know about when you array things is that typically when you array things, it makes clones of each other. Okay, so if you change any one of them, it changes all of them. Okay, and let's show you how that works. Okay, again, if you haven't arrayed things, don't worry, it won't happen to you. But if you choose an arrayed item, these windows all got created as part of an array. So all the different instances are clones of each other. You notice there's a little blue box that's floating around. What'll happen is if you try to change things that are in an array, okay, you won't be able to. You'll have to edit the group, and then you'll be able to change it. And the reason they sort of put that behind a protective layer is just that it tends to be a fairly impactful thing. Come back over here, I will change that. It changed the one. If I finish it, notice it changes it on everyone in the array. Okay, so if you array, it kind of puts everything behind a little protective envelope to make sure that you don't accidentally change things. Just give you a little fair warning on it.